welcome to this, and this will be my pay-per-view review for Dragon Gate's Uprising pay-per-view, which aired Friday. I didn't get a chance to watch it until tonight. I watched it instead of Victory Road. I think Victory Road was on tonight. That was the TNA pay-per-view that was on tonight. Watched that instead. And from what I've gathered from what I've read from the results, I think I made the better choice because it did not look. Victory Road, there was some good stuff it looked like, but nothing that I wouldn't want to watch. But here we go with Dragon Gate. Now, I'm going to talk about this now because this would be stupid time to talk about this when I do the next Dragon Gate review, which will be their 1 year anniversary. We'll also have Bryan Danielson on the show. Now, without a doubt, that show's going to have a bunch of people at it for one of two reasons. One, they're doing a double shot with Chikara, so a lot of the Chikara faithful will show up. And then, of course, Bryan Danielson's going to be on the show too, and that's going to be a big deal. So, hopefully, Gabe realizes that, yes, he's going to get a lot of people at these shows, I think. I'm pretty sure that he's going to get a lot of people at these shows. Don't think that they're there necessarily to see Dragon Gate. Because if there's one thing that we've seen, I would think, over the last 6 months, it's that there's, the Dragon Gate attendances have definitely been going down. This show didn't have very many people on it. You could definitely tell with some of the camera shots that they're very loud and they were very into the show, which was cool. But there was definitely not a lot of people there. Maybe 300, if I remember the amount of people they said were there. It did come off very kind of low rent because it looked like they were in a warehouse. I mean, this looked like everything that everyone always gripes about in indie wrestling from a production point and from just like looking from just from watching it came off very much like that, and that comes from someone that watches a lot of indie wrestling. So I put up with a lot of stuff. So hopefully we're a year into it. There hasn't I would say been a storyline that has really grabbed people's attention. And I think part of that is I think people would have been into the Chikara Dragon Gate feud, except that it's been very off and on throughout this entire pay-per-view. They tried to do feuds, and Dave Meltzer talked about this, and I've seen other people talk about this, that the feuds didn't seem to really catch on. A lot of the angles didn't catch on. That people would watch the matches, see the matches, and then they would do whatever angle they would do after the match, and then the crowd was just kind of out of it. And a lot of people thought it was just because people were there to see the pretty moves and the spots and this and that. I think that's part of it, but I also think that just for me watching and someone that watches Dragon Gate, Japanese Dragon Gate, and watches other stuff as well, none of these feuds or none of the angles really just catch your eye. They're just kind of like, oh yay, there's nothing there that just seems really good. And I think that's part of the problem, is there's nothing that you can kind of latch onto. And I think the one feud that they had that they've kind of dragged their feet with, which was the Dragon Gate Chikara feud, which they are going to do more apparently on the next pay-per-view, as that's going to be a big deal. Just kind of, there's not a lot of that. And I think that makes the pay-per-views just not a lot of fun, in my opinion. I think there's a lot, like on this pay-per-view, there's nothing bad on this pay-per-view, but at the same time, it wasn't as fun as watching, like a Dragon Gate pay-per-view from Japan. If any of you have ever seen any of those, they're fun. You get a lot of the same type of action to a degree. I think that the action here that they put on in the United States, because I think they just try to they do get more spot happy than they do in Japan to an extent, and they don't do as much comedy as they do in Japan here, which, I also is probably part of it, but it just doesn't come off the same. So hopefully that changes, and I want to talk about that here because it would be silly to talk about that. Oh my God, look at this big show, and did you see the great crowd? And they did such great numbers for this. It'd be kind of silly. But hopefully when that show takes place, they don't rest on the laurels and say, oh look, everything's happy, because how many pay-per-views are you going to have Bryan Danielson for? 1, maybe 2, realistically, before he winds up in TNA or back in WWE. I mean, come on. So let's get on with the matches that we have here. The first match was Tozawa taking on Mochizuki. I'm going to butcher people's names. Their names I will butcher without a doubt. It was a good opener, good X Division type opener. Didn't really like the end. The end kind of was like the end was a lot like the end of the match for the pay-per-view, the last pay-per-view. It was just kind of like that was the end, and it came off kind of flat. Not as flat, but it did come off, in my opinion, kind of flat. Lots of good moves though. Lots of good action. It was a good fun opener. So there was that. Then we had Jon Moxley taking on Jimmy Jacobs. This was pretty good. I'm not into the whole Jon Moxley thing, so that's probably one reason. And Jimmy Jacobs just doesn't seem the same type of guy that he was when he was in Ring of Honor for whatever reason. I don't know why. I just get that vibe. Jon Moxley did bring out a woman with him who they never said who it was. I don't know if his gimmick is that every time he's on pay-per-view he has a different woman with him, and we're just supposed to accept that it's just a different woman. Though to me she looked like crack whore. I mean, she looked like a crack whore stripper to me, which didn't come off very well. They were being weird, biting on each other. It just came off very odd to me. Match was a pretty good little hardcore match. I've seen Jimmy Jacobs in better hardcore matches, but it just came off kind of flat to me, at least. And was good. They did an angle after the match with Jimmy Jacobs and BB Hulk and beatdowns and all this stuff. And again, it didn't come off as well as I think they had hoped. But there you go. Then we got Pac, who, if you don't know who Pac is a guy from the UK or Europe. He's a big indie star from there. He also is one of the guys that Dragon Gate Japan brings in a lot as far as foreign talent, and I wish they would bring in more of the guys that they use in Japan as far as foreign talent, because I do think that talent is something that is missing on some of these shows. Hopefully we get more Pac, because Pac is very good. He's very athletic. He does a lot of fun things. The first time you see him, you're usually really impressed with him. I'm a really big fan of him. I wish Ring of Honor would use him more, but the last time he was in Ring of Honor, he was in New York City and had a very bad match. And even for him, it was a very bad match. And they edited it on DVD, but the New York crowd kind of crapped on him, and he hasn't been back since. So there's that. So there's Pac and Naruki Doi taking on Quackenbush and Jigsaw. This was very good tag match. Some people will probably like this better than me, but I did think it was a little too spotty. But I thought it was very good. Really enjoyed it. I really liked the Pac and Quackenbush when they were just kind of doing the European wrestling stuff. That's the type of stuff that we don't see enough of with the guys that know how to do it, in my opinion, because it's different. It's something that not everybody sees a lot of, and it's always a lot of fun, just in my opinion. But this was a very good match. Again, you had them trying to do another the whole Dragon Gate versus Chikara. That feud at the end of this match. Again, it didn't come off. I think it came off better than the others did, except for the one at the main event. But it still didn't come off as good as I think they really hoped. Then we got I can't think, who was it that debuted? Somebody debuted. Who was it that debuted? It was here I've got Brody Lee. Brody Lee, they had two guys that they said had impressed them at the tryouts that they had, and they brought them out. Brody Lee came out, destroyed a bunch of guys. If you've never seen Brody Lee's probably a legit 6'6", maybe taller. And with guys like this, within the Dragon Gate and within most indies, he towers over a lot of guys. He looks like a legit monster. And it's nice to see them finally bringing in a guy like this. Though you do have to kind of wonder why it took them so long, because Brody Lee's pretty good. I mean, for an indie big guy, he's pretty good. he works with guys like this. He works very well with smaller guys, so it's kind of interesting that they're just now bringing him in. So they brought him in. Then we got the second tag match, which was Shingo and Yamato taking on Cima and Dragon Kid. This was great. Again, was very spotty, but was great. Had a lot of innovative stuff. Though it was, it was nothing that we hadn't seen before. If you've seen a lot of the Dragon Gate pay-per-views, if you've seen a lot of Dragon Gate stuff, it's nothing that's just gonna, there was some new stuff, but there wasn't stuff that just is gonna make you go, oh my god, you need to see this. But it was still great. So there was that, and again, we had another, them trying to do angles that didn't come off quite as good as they thought. And then we had the main event, which was BB Hulk and Yoshino for the what is it? The Dragon Gate, Open the Freedom Gate belt. This was pretty good. Not as great as the tag matches, which is kind of unfortunate. I think that's the one thing with BB Hulk being the champion is BB Hulk isn't the best guy, even with the guys they use in Dragon Gate USA. Though he's entertaining, but he's not the best guy, so you're not necessarily going to get the best matches. This was still pretty good. I enjoyed it. I still think it was a pretty solid main event. And then they had a big brawl after the main event, which again probably went too long. Was probably either the best or second best angle on the show. So it was good to see them trying to do angles, but again, it just didn't come off very well. But the wrestling on the show was as you can see was pretty great. If you look at the star ratings, it was pretty great. I wouldn't recommend the pay-per-view necessarily. It just didn't come off as very fun, even though the wrestling was very good. And you can have a lot of very good wrestling, but if the show comes off flat and it just comes off as, ooh, that was pretty, ooh, that was nice, ooh, that was a good match, but you're just not excited about seeing, great matches, which sounds very strange, I know, but it is kind of true with Dragon Gate. I don't know what was on, what will be on the DVD. This isn't like the stuff that we saw in Phoenix, where the pay-per-view there, I could easily recommend that DVD and not recommend the pay-per-view because the DVD had another great match on it. And I don't know what else was on this card. So, but, I mean, if you like the Dragon Gate stuff, I would definitely say, watch it. If not, it's nothing to go out of your way and see. I definitely think the next pay-per-view will probably be, a lot better than this. I think it'll probably be closer to the level of the first two. And it's kind of like what I said when I did the review for the first Dragon Gate pay-per-view, where I talked about the fact that after you see this stuff, you do get kind of desensitized to it to a degree. And I was afraid that was going to happen because I didn't see them doing a lot of the same things they do in Japan, where it's a little more fun, a little more lighthearted to a degree. They do some things different, even though they're still doing a lot of the same type of matches that kind of separate it from other things, and we're not getting that, and so it feels like the same thing over and over and over again, and that's not very good. But with that, I'm out. Have a good one. Later.